Today, our lesson is on adding and subtracting fractions. We will start by going over the steps needed to add and subtract fractions. There are 4 steps. The first step, you will find a least common multiple for your least common denominator. You'll start with focusing on your denominators. Second, you'll make equivalent fractions with the given fractions in the problem. Thirdly, you would add or subtract the numbers depending on your symbol, whether it's a addition symbol or a subtraction symbol. And last, you have to remember to simplify the fraction or reduce the fraction if needed. 8/15 minus 2/5. I noticed that the denominators are 15 and 5, so we will get the multiples of 15 and the multiples of 5. And your multiples are nothing but your answers to the multiplication. For example, if you have 15, 15 times 1 is 15, 15 times 2 is 30, 15 times 3 is 45, 15 times 4 is 60, and 15 times 5 is 75. I usually work with about 5 multiples, and that helps me a lot of times to get the least common multiple. 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4 is 20, and 5 times 5 is 25. When you look at all of your numbers, what do you have in common? Looks like you have 15 in common, so 15 would be your least common denominator. You will put that 15 as your denominator here. You'll put that 15 again as your least common denominator all the way to the right of these 2 fractions. And what you're trying to do now is get an equivalent fraction of 8/15 and another equivalent fraction of 2/15 using your denominator of 2/5 using your denominator of 15. Well, we know that 8/15 is equivalent to 8/15. Right there, you would basically multiply 1 times 1. The next one, if you look at your denominators, you have a denominator in 2/5 of 5 and a 15 trying to make an equivalent fraction. Well, we know that 5 times 3 is 15. So if I multiply times 3 on the bottom with my denominator, then I have to do the same thing for my numerator on top. 2 times 3 gives me 6. Now you have 8/15 minus 6/15. The 8/15 is equivalent to 8/15 and the 2/5 is equivalent to 6/15s. You will notice that you have made equivalent fractions with what was given. I see our symbol is subtraction symbol, so we basically subtract the numerators. And our denominator, we just got a least common denominator, so it stays the same. 8 minus 6 is 2 over 15. So 2/15 is your answer. You always look at your numerator and denominator and ask yourself the question when you're trying to see if you need to simplify or reduce that fraction, is there a common factor of 2 and 15? And the answer is no, so 2/15 is a simplified fraction. Now we have 4/20 plus 2/10. I see 2 different denominators, but we want those denominators to be the same. Let's start with getting our multiples of 20 and our multiples of 10. 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. Remember I said try with 5, and if you get a common denominator, a common multiple, then you're good, and if not, then you would keep adding until you got a common multiple. The multiples of 10 are 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. When you're looking at both rows, I see a 20 in common, and I also see a 40 in common. But of course, we will go with the 20 because we're looking for the least common multiple. If 20 is our least common multiple, over here, right to the right of both of our fractions, we will put 20 as our denominator. That is our least common denominator. And now we need to make an equivalent fraction. Well, if you look at your 14 over 20 here, 14 over 20 will equal to 14 over 20. And 2/10, well, you look at both of your denominators is equal to what over 20? 10 and 20. 10 times what gives you 20? 10 times 2. If we multiply times 2 on the bottom of that fraction, we need to multiply times 2 on the top. Whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do the same thing on the top. So 2 times 2 is 4. I see now that we have common denominators of 20. All we have to do now is look at our symbol over here, which is a plus symbol. So we need to add the two numerators. 14 plus 4 is 18 over 20. Remember, our denominators stay the same now that we have them in common. Now I'm looking at our answer of 18 over 20, and I'm asking myself the question, is there a common multiple, a common factor of both of these, numerator and the denominator? And I would say yes, it is a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 on the top and divide by 2 on the bottom. 18 divided by 2 would give me 9. 20 divided by 2 would give me 10. Once again, now I have 9/10, and I need to look at both of those, the numerator and the denominator, both of those numbers, asking myself the question, is there a common factor? In this case, there is not a common factor, which lets me know that my final answer is 9/10. Now we have 5 over 9 plus 1 over 4. We have a 9 as a denominator and we have a 4 as a denominator. So those are the numbers that we're going to get a multiple of. 9, 18. Remember, it's just the answer to the multiplications of 9 and the answer to the multiplications of 4. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. 27. 36. And 45. Now let's get our multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. We have 5 multiples of 9 and we have 5 multiples of 4, and we don't see anything in common, so let's go a little bit further with our multiples. 24, nothing in common from the top row. 28, nothing in common. 32 and 36. Now I see something in common. And we're always looking for the least common multiple. What we see in common is 36. So 36 is our least common denominator. So to the right of our fractions over here, we will put 36 as our denominator. And remember, you have to make equivalent fractions of the fractions that are given. 5/9 is given and 1/4 is given. And the way you make those equivalent fractions is looking at both denominators and figuring out what is the factor of the other number. How can you multiply 9 times what number will give you 36 and 4 times what number will give you 36? Well, we know that 9 times 4 is 36, which means we will have to multiply 5 times 4 on the top. Remember, whatever you do on the bottom of the fraction, you must do the same thing on top. So 5 times 4 is 20. Down at your bottom, you have 4 and you have 36. 4 times what number gives you 36? And that number is 9. If we multiply times 9 on the bottom, then we have to multiply times 9 on the top. And 1 times 9 is 9. Now we have common denominators, and we have a plus symbol here, which means we're going to add the two numerators. 20 plus 9, we know is 29 over 36. Once again, always look at the final answer and see if you need to simplify it. 29 over 36. To see, what you're checking for is if they have a common factor. And it looks like they don't. So 29 over 36 is a simplified fraction, and that is our answer. 3/6 minus 1/8. I see a 6 and an 8 as denominators. We need to get our multiples of 6 and 8. 6, 12, 18, 24, and 30. 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. Do you see any numbers in common with your multiples of 6 and your multiples of 8? And yes, you do. The number that we have in common is 24. So 24 will be our least common denominator. Remember, to the right of each of the given fractions, you have to put that denominator, and then you'll have to make an equivalent fraction using your denominator of 24, an equivalent fraction of 3/6 and 1/8. Basically, by looking to see your denominators on the left, if you take your denominator on the left and multiply it times a number, 6 times what number gives you 24? And we know that 6 times 4 gives you 24, which means if we multiply times 4 on the bottom of the fraction, we must multiply times 4 on the top of the fraction. And 3 times 4 gives you 12. Down at your bottom, you have an 8 and a 24. Well, you ask yourself the question, 8 times what number gives you 24? And it is 8 times 3. If you multiply times 3 on the bottom, or your denominator, then you have to multiply times 3 on the top, which is your numerator. 1 times 3 gives you 3. Now you look and see, do I add or subtract? Well, our subtraction symbol here lets us know that we need to subtract, and the only thing that we subtract is our numerators. 12 minus 3, and that gives you 9 over 24. Then you look to see if you need to simplify or reduce the fraction by checking to see if 9 and 24 have a common factor. And yes, they do. A common factor of 3. So we will divide by 3. You'll have to divide the 9 by 3, and you'll have to divide the 24 by 3. 9 divided by 3 gives you 3, and 24 divided by 3 gives you 8. Once again, we have 3/8 now, and we're checking to see if that is a simplified fraction or not by looking to see if 3 and 8 have a common factor. And looking at it, no, they don't. So our answer is 3/8.